morning, students and parents. Hope you're doing well. This is a video on perimeter and area. Those are two very important parts of fourth grade, is knowing how to determine that. In this case, we have a known perimeter. In other words, our perimeter is going to be the same, but our area is going to change. And how would we determine an area based on the perimeter? How would we set up a problem like that? This has a little bit more concentration in it. I hope you're ready for it. Good luck. So this is our last word problem for our area. We'll probably have a test on word problems after this. We found out that you can have an area, a fixed area, and you can change the shape and the perimeter changes. In this example, we're going to have a fixed perimeter, and we're going to see what the area becomes. Let's go ahead and read the problem. You want to build a new outdoor dog pen for your pet. So you usually don't mark off the area for that. You usually buy some fencing. So you go out and you buy a length. It says I have a length of 30 yards of fencing. Now a yard is 3 feet. Fabric is measured in yard. Sometimes fencing is measured in yard as well. You have a length of 30 yards of fencing. That would be your perimeter. So let's say this rubber band is your fencing, and it is 30 yards all the way around. Okay. Using all the fencing, so we're going to use all of it. How big in square yards can you make your dog pen? What would the perimeter be? Well, we already know what the perimeter is going to be because here's our perimeter. It's 30 yards all the way around. But we don't know what our area is going to be. So this question is actually already answered because we have a length of 30 yards of fencing. So let's look at an example of this. Here's kind of an abstract model because it's much smaller than the fencing would actually be. But I used some graph paper, so that it's going to be the squares is going to be the area we're going to look for. And we have this fencing. And if we stretch this fencing out and use all of it over our pens here, you can see that that would be one rectangle that we could make out of our fencing. And this would be 30 yards. Now these two sides have to be the same. And these two sides have to be the same. So you're going to have to do a little bit of calculating for that. So let's look at some of that calculations. You know that our sum, using addition, is going to be 30 yards. I'm going to put S on this to make it plural. And you know that two of these have to be the same. Remember? These two have to be the same, and these two have to be the same, and we're going to come up with some results here. And remember, these two numbers were exactly the same. So what two numbers that are exactly the same that we can add together that equals 30 yards? Can you do that in your head? You want two numbers that equals 30. If you said 15, you're correct. So again, we're doing like we do for our word problem. We're filling in what we know, okay, kind of over in this section. We're filling in what we know about perimeter. Now these numbers have to add up to 15. I could put 8 and 7s here, and that would add up to 15. So one side would be 8. Let's make that the longer side. And one side would be 7. That's totally up to you. That's your choice. Okay. Another easier one, I think, would be one that's 10 and 5. So this longer this length would be 10, and the width would be 5. And this would be 5, and this would be 10, right? So we have 10 plus 5 plus 10 plus 5, that equals 15. That's going to equal 30 yards for our perimeter. So we have quite a few choices with how we can design our dog pen, as long as our lengths and our widths add up to 15, which is going to be the total length of the fence. So I'm going to leave this like this. I'm going to say this is 10 yards, and this is 5 yards. Okay. And now I have to figure out what my square footage is going to be in that. And that's relatively easy, because I know how to multiply my 5s, and I know how to multiply my 10. And that's going to tell me how many square yards are inside my area. So I hope this was a little bit helpful. Let's go back to the word problem, and let's set up the word problem like we do all word problems, and kind of keep this in mind. If you remember our word problem, solve the word problem below using a 3-column graphic organizer. Include a column for what is known. So here's our column for what is known. The model. And we kind of made a model with that rubber band and pens. And this is what? An equation. So remember, under known, include what is known. Numbers. So we have numbers over here. We have units. And we have what goes here. Right here. We have the operation. And we're going to fill in these parts that we already know. We have a statement down here. There are 2 questions, so you will need 2 statements for each one. What would the perimeter be? What do we say the perimeter was? 30 yards of fencing. Remember, the perimeter is this line that goes along the outside from one corner and then back to that same corner. So it's 10, 5, 10, 5. And that equals 30. We already kind of thought about that a little bit. So we can answer one of our questions. What would the perimeter be? The perimeter would be 30 yards. So our pen is going to have a perimeter of 30 yards. What would the area, using all the pens, how big in square yards can you make the dog pen? The dog pen, again, I'm taking words from our question up here. The dog pen is something square yards. We know it's going to be square yards because that's how we measure area, this part in here. Now I'm going to have you fill in the rest of this. You can use the numbers I used if you'd like. You can come up with different numbers and see how that affects the area. Because again, we can change this shape, and we aren't just using squares this time, we're using the perimeter, the length. I'm kind of curious, what's the largest dog pen we can make out of 30 yards? I don't know the answer to that. I would have to experiment with that. So experiment with some shapes. Your answers are going to be different because you can choose whatever numbers you want for your sides, your length, and your width. You can choose whatever numbers you want. They do have to add up to 15 though. Good luck.